Hey, 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 it is Rebecca Simon Peter with Leadership Mojo. I'm really excited to be with you today. As you know, my passion is transforming church leaders and the congregations they serve. And in the work that I do with creating a culture of renewal, I've had so much opportunity to interact with church leaders. And I just love supporting the work that you're doing because I think we're out to fulfill Jesus's big dream: thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And one of the big questions that's everybody's asking lately is, all right, given the pandemic, how do we fill the pews? How do we get people back to church? Can we ever expect attendance to rise to where it was pre-pandemic? I've been giving this a lot of thought, and I really wanted to share with you the 8 ways that I can see that will fill your pews. Now, these 8 ways are built on 8 facts that reveal 8 needs that point to 8 different actions that you can take to fill your pews. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. All right, get your pen and paper out. Here's the first fact: people are built for relationship with God. People are built for relationship with God. From our cells to our nervous systems to our brains, we are built for relationship with God. It's coded into our biology. So the need that points to is the need for the opportunity to grow spiritually. The beauty of this is that's exactly what churches can be brilliant at, is giving people the opportunity to grow spiritually. So what does that look like? Gathering people for study, gathering people for Bible study, book study, gathering people for encouragement, prayer, gathering people for worship, gathering people for mission, all opportunities to grow spiritually, and silent retreats. A friend of mine, her husband, who's a pastor also, just finished a silent retreat, opportunity to grow spiritually. So what are some examples of how you could put this into practice? I bet you have some ideas. Feel free to put them in the chat. I'd love to see what you're thinking about. But while you're queuing up to put stuff in the chat, let me just say, I think you could start a new Bible study this fall. It's not that far away. You could start a prayer initiative. You could even start a class on relationships, something that may have been a little hurting during the pandemic. A lot of people spending a lot of time together that haven't gotten the kind of break they normally get. So that's the first fact. People are built for relationship with God. Second fact number 2, people are social. We're social human beings. Boy, did we learn that during the pandemic. While some of us were more than happy to have a little more isolated time, the truth is we missed each other. We missed touch, we missed gathering. We're social creatures. So the need that's revealed there is the need for community. Again, this is great news for the church because here are some actions you can take. Gather people around common interests. Gather people around common needs, and be creative while you do it. Here's what I mean. You can gather people around, say, a cooking class or a gardening class or construction projects, and you can take the biblical themes that are tied into that and weave together the social and the spiritual at the same time. Let's say you did a cooking class. You could talk about being fed spiritually. You could talk about all the examples of meals that were taken together in the Bible. You could talk about plants of the Bible. If you hosted some construction projects, you could weave the spiritual into the social by having a little brief Bible study or a scripture to memorize to begin with that has to do with the building up or how we are built in Christ and all the different ways that we're built. That would be beautiful. Another option for really keeping the social alive while you're filling your pews is to keep that hybrid option open. So whatever you're doing, whether you're working on the spiritual aspect of things or the social aspect of things, make sure that online options are a part of the mix along with face-to-face options. That's the hybrid approach. And it's going to be really important to keep that alive because you just never know. With Delta being what it is and people being a little skittish sometimes or just traveling, maybe they'd like to join you from the road. All right, fact number 3 about how to fill your pews. And that's about youth and young adults. The fact is they need to belong. They need to belong. You remember when you were a teenager, or maybe you still are, teens want to spend a heck of a lot more time with their family and young people with their friends than they do with their family. And that wasn't always possible during the pandemic year. And I think the need that's really revealed here is the need of acceptance, the need for exploration, the need to belong while pushing the edges. Frankly, it's one of the reasons young people don't always feel so comfortable at church because oftentimes church people feel like they have to give the answer. You know what? Young people a lot of times don't want the answer. What they want is to be able to ask the questions that are on their mind. We have to be comfortable and give the freedom to young people so that they can ask questions, they can explore. Because the work they're doing developmentally now is to form their own identity. So they need community, boomers need community. But I'm telling you, two different ways of doing community. Okay. So youth and young adults need community. The truth is, they have tons of options. So I want to encourage you to get out there in the mix and develop some faith based options where God is cool, right? Like faith is cool, but answers aren't pre-packaged, where people really can discover their own answers. Questions are welcome. Now, an example of a really great ministry like this has been put together by my friend and colleague, Reverend Mary Beth Taylor, and she's put together a whole format called Open Space. Now, just listen to the name of that, Open Space. It's a space where you can be open with each other. It's a space where questions are welcomed. It's a space where you don't have to conform in order to fit. Things like that can make a really big difference for teens, for young people, for young adults, even for some older adults. My dad left the church when he was 20. He had questions. Do you know at 85, he's still got the same questions? He's answering them a bit differently. But the point is that sometimes even your older folks would love to be in on open space conversations. All right. Fact number 4. The pandemic has changed people. It's changed our habits. It's changed our patterns. It has changed our expectations. I mean, take me, for example. I'm incredibly committed to the church. I've devoted my life to communities of faith. And before the pandemic, I was a regular at the church right next door. In the meantime, though, my family started a family Zoom meeting that happens at the exact same time that worship has moved to. It's often an international gathering. I've got cousins and nieces and nephews all over the world, and it's become such an important part of my week and of our family togetherness that never existed at this level before. I am loath to miss it. The pandemic has changed our habits, our patterns, and our expectations. So what's the need that's revealed there? Well, people need and want flexibility, time flexibility. People need and want options like, hey, it's not just one thing anymore, because how are the many ways that we could do it? And people need and want shorter offerings. Shorter offerings. Okay. You know, our attention span has shrunk. People want shorter. So, what are some actions you can take based on this fact and the needs that are revealed to fill your pews? I would say the first thing is to reduce the length of your offerings. If your worship is an hour and a quarter, bring it down to 55 minutes. If your worship is an hour, bring it down to 50 minutes. Now, this has nothing to do with beating out the Baptists at the buffet, okay? This has to do with keeping your people coming back and giving more people less, as it were, than fewer people more, okay? We really want to think about how to feed people because there are actually so many options. Bible studies, instead of going an hour, what about 35 minutes? My friend and publisher of Market Square Publishing, Kevin Slimp, runs a Bible study that is actually a Sunday school class that has actually grown during the pandemic 33%. And one of the things they did is they made sure they had online options as well as live options at the same time for people to participate. And they reduced the length of the Sunday school class from 55 minutes to 35 minutes, no matter how good the conversation is. 35 minutes. Tell me that won't keep people coming back. So one of the things you can do is look specifically at your offerings and think, we don't have to keep doing things the way we've always done it. What are people looking for now? Well, if they're looking for shorter, they're looking for more options, and they're looking for flexibility, reducing the length of time is going to be really important. And then giving people, again, the hybrid option. They can be live, they can be virtual. All right, here's fact number 5. The pandemic has created a very busy digital space. All right. Everybody's online. Sometimes I'll see three of my colleagues doing a Facebook Live, like at the same time. I look down at my phone and I think, wow, all of this is going on at the same time. And, people don't have to attend something that's local or in their region anymore. They can participate anywhere in the world. They could go to a worship service in India. They could be in London. They could be anywhere in the world, but you want them to be with you. So here's the thing, you got to up your communication. That's the need that's revealed here from this fact. The digital space is busy. Up your communication. Um, Remind people that you're there. Don't think that they've been tracking all along with you and that they know now you're meeting in the sanctuary and you've got stuff on Facebook Live. They may know that, but likely they don't really know that. So I would act as if this is brand new communication and let them know what you're doing. If you're doing a special Bible study, if you're doing a study of the stained glass windows in the sanctuary, if there's going to be a special theme and prayer request taken, let people know, because people have so many choices these days. The more you can distinguish what it is you're doing from everybody else, the more likely people will be to choose you. And don't forget, people appreciate being invited and invited back. So those are the actions that you can take. And the way is use every single form of communication that you have. Now, personally, I like things by email and text, but I'm not everybody. Other people like phone calls and visits. Other people want Facebook Live and notices. So I would say use every kind of form of communication that you have and be clear about who you are. If you're open-minded and progressive, say that. If you're old school and traditional, say that. If you are grandparents raising grandkids, say that. If you're grumpy and haters, say that. There are going to be other grumpy haters out there that will want to join you. Be clear about who you are. I think the days of we're a church for everybody worked really, really well when people walked to a neighborhood church for a physical location. But when there are so many choices, how will they distinguish you? Let them know who you are. Now, an example of a really great way to do this is to mail out the monthly newsletter again and let people know the specific things that you're offering at the specific times. Recently, a study was done about how millennials like to receive their news. You might be surprised to know they don't want their news online. They want something coming in the mail to them. So snail mail is not dead. In fact, it now stands out because everything else is online. Don't forget to update your website. Don't forget to update your Facebook page. But the main point here, be in communication, even with folks that have been gone for a while. All right, fact number 6, we're talking about how you can fill your pews. Well, the pandemic is not over. August 2021, the pandemic's not over. So that reveals a couple of needs. The first need is that people need to feel safe. They need to feel safe. And the second need, I think, is that you have a need to ensure continuity so that you're not open, closed, shut down, open, but there's just a real continuity. And regardless of what the Delta variant serves up, you guys can meet. So some of the actions to take here, I think, have to do with normalizing mask wearing and social distancing, and also normalizing non-mask wearing and non-social distancing. Let me give you an example. If you move from a small classroom and instead meet in a large sanctuary, you can have people who want to social distance and wear masks comfortably do that. They can choose to sit anywhere they want in the sanctuary. And you can choose people who don't want to mask or social distance be able to sit together. Maybe you've got a family unit, maybe you've got a couple, maybe you've got friends, or maybe they're just people who don't want to mask and don't want to social distance, but you can actually provide space for all of that in the sanctuary. And I think there's something really beautiful and symbolic about that as well. I've noticed that many people have taken to really getting righteous about their point of view about what's the right way to approach things and the wrong way to approach things. Yes, and nobody really wants to be made wrong for the way they're approaching the pandemic. As churches, we promise to be places of not only justice, but peace, of acceptance, of inclusion. How can we be gracious with people and honor the varying positions that people are at while keeping everybody safe? I think there are ways to do it, and mostly it has to do with our frame of mind and being willing to be creative so that we can create gracious space. All right, so let's go to fact number 7. This is a crazy one. It turns out we don't need buildings to be or do church. In 2019, I'm not sure that many of us would have thought that. But now we know for sure we don't need it. We really don't. So the need that's revealed here is the need for good use of your building space. Now, for some of you, you're going to realize, okay, it's time to sell, it's time to downsize, it's time to reduce our footprint. But others of you, no way do you want to get rid of your building. It's a sacred space for you. I think the action that you can take here is begin to reframe how you think about your building. Instead of it being a congregational asset, I want to encourage you to think of your building as a community asset. Not just a place community members can come and be in your space, but a community space hosted by the church. I read about one church that painted one of its rooms in bright colors, and they called it the birthday room. It now belongs to the community. Yes, folks have to reserve a space and sign up and all of that, but it's a place that anybody could hold a birthday party. Now you look at restaurants, you look at movie theaters, they have birthday rooms. Why shouldn't the church have a birthday room? Again, it could be the coming together of social and spiritual, of congregational and communal. There's something really beautiful about that. You could also designate one of your rooms as a community room, not necessarily for birthdays, but for other places that people in the community can gather. So that's a big shift. I think it's a really important one, and I think it's a really creative one that will allow us to fill the pews because it's easy access into the building. Now, the last thing that I want us to think about when it comes to how to fill your pews is a shift in mindset. And it comes from this fact: the future is surprising. That's fact number 8. The future is surprising. I don't think we knew until 2019, 2020 how surprising the future could be. But I think from here on out, we ought to assume this is the norm. Now, that reveals a need underneath. And the need is for comfort. And the need is for a sense of emotional safety. Because not everybody wants to be surprised all the time. Amen? They just don't. And yet, if the future is surprising, how do we provide for comfort and safety? Here's what I think we can do, the actions that we can take. Begin to expand your theology. Begin to understand that God is not only with you in the tough times, but God goes before you in the tough times. That God is dancing with you, being in the conversation with you in the tough times. God is moving with you in the tough times, accompanying you, always with you. That gives us a great deal of resilience. So that's the second thing that I think the action that we can take is to own our resilience. You got through the pandemic. There's a reason you're listening to this Facebook Live. You got through the pandemic. Now you want to know how to fill the pews. Your people that are with you got through the pandemic. You have resilience. I would say own it. Part of owning resilience then gives you the opportunity to create a big, bold vision that aligns with Jesus's. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Turn your thoughts from inward focus to outward focus, from survival in the church to thriving in the community, and dream big, bold dreams, knowing that God goes before you, God is with you, and God is dancing in the conversation with you. So it's the question that's before us. How do you fill your pews? I've just laid out 8 facts, 8 needs that they reveal, and 8 actions that you can take. When I was recently talking with some other church leaders about this, one of the questions that came forward was, do you think we'll ever get back to our pre-pandemic size? They had 200 in worship before the pandemic. They shrunk down to 100 in attendance, plus 50 online. My answer to this pastor was if we get outside of the box that has already been burst open, if we get outside of the box, I think we can actually exceed the numbers. But we have to think about filling the pews in new ways, thinking about bringing the social and the spiritual together, the communal and the congregational, and being church in all the ways and all the spaces and all the places that we go, and inviting people into spiritual community in a variety of creative, fresh, and new ways. I think the future is really limitless for us when we think about our pews that way and when we think about our congregations that way. They exist in many spaces and shapes and sizes all at the same time. Instead of one worship service alone, what are the many ways we can cultivate spiritual community? So, this is Rebecca Simon Peter with Leadership Mojo. I have loved being with you and sharing these ideas with you. I really want you to take them, share these ideas with other key leaders in your congregations because you too are wondering, how do we fill these pews? Can we fill these pews? How do we be church in a really vibrant way in days like this? So, I invite you to come next week when we will be back for another spiritual mojo, leadership mojo with a spiritual bent, and I will see you then. Thanks so much.